Hi everybody, it's John Wheatcroft here, bringing you another Sunday Q&A. We're up to week number 46 and it's Easter Sunday, so I hope you're having a great Easter weekend, a great bank holiday weekend. I was really thrilled this week to do a performance with my great friend Francesco Castro and his quartet up at Oliver's Jazz Bar up in Greenwich, which we filmed, and it's going to be broadcast on Facebook, I think on April the 12th. I think that's the date it's going to be broadcast. But I'm going to give you a sneak preview of that by showing you just one of the tunes, in fact the first tune from the set. It's a great quartet. Francesco's an amazing guitar player. I'm sure you'll enjoy it. I certainly did. It was great to play with a band, to just play with a rhythm section for the first time in quite some time for me. So I hope you enjoy that performance, and then we'll get stuck into the questions. There's a bit of a pentatonic theme this week, so I'm going to be looking at hybrid pentatonics. That's how you can modify the intervals in pentatonic ideas to suit different harmonic purposes. And then I'm going to be applying some of those ideas to some more kind of sophisticated jazz harmony, both major and minor 2-5-1s, changing the pentatonic option for each of the three chords. Then I'm going to be looking at some grouping ideas, rhythmic groupings, the difference between a phrase and a rate, those kind of things, which will hopefully allow you to access some odd groupings. So I'm going to be looking at things that are based on 3s, 4s, which of course is an even grouping, but then 5s. So playing phrases that consist of 5 notes. So I hope you enjoy. Here comes the music. See you on the other side with the questions. Great question from Leon relating to how to use pentatonic scales in a jazz context. So I thought I'd revisit the subject of what we might call pentatonic hybrids. So pentatonic scales, for the most guitar players are familiar with pentatonic scales, and we learn two varieties of pentatonic scale to get us started, but they're by no means the only possible options. And the two that we generally know to begin with are the major pentatonic. So I'll play these in A major being 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, an octave. Like the tune My Girl. Fits over major chords, of course. And the minor pentatonic, which is like every Led Zeppelin riff and classic rock, blues and so on. So the minor pentatonic is the root, minor third, the 4, the 5, the flat 7 and the octave. Okay, now these things work great on the guitar because they usually play 2 notes per string. So they flow nicely, they're articulate, you can put expression into them, you can bend, hammer on, slide, all of those kind of fun things that we like to do on the guitar. So they definitely work. That's not the only option, of course, and certain guitar players have made kind of quite a feature in their playing of reconfiguring the notes. So instead of playing 2 notes per string, you could play some strings with 3 notes. So for example, the guitarist Frank Gambale, he configures his pentatonic scales. Instead of playing 2 on a string, on each string, he might configure it so that he has 3, then 1, and then 3, then 1, and 3, and so on. And he does this to allow him certain picking options. So if he were using his continual follow-through picking technique, it means that you can now take in 3 notes with 1 pick stroke. So that would mean he might go down, up, and then the next 3 notes with 1 downstroke. Down, down, down. And that's taken out with 1 pick stroke. But maybe that's another subject and something that we can cover at some point as to how you can reconfigure pentatonic scale patterns for an articulation perspective. You can also play them 3 notes per string, a la Paul Gilbert. You could play them with uneven note groupings, like 2 notes and then 3, 2 notes and 3, like Jason Becker or someone like that. Yeah. So there's lots of different options with just the basic major and minor pentatonic scales. But they're not the only options. So there are some different configurations that you might wish to consider. So, for example, a popular pentatonic for major type chords, of course, if we play a major pentatonic, which goes 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, an octave, that has a significant omission, really. It doesn't have a 7. So if I were playing that against the dominant 7 chord, I might deem that the 7 degree is more important than the 6, perhaps, arguably. So I could create a pentatonic that replaces the 6 with the 7. That kind of sound. Django Reinhardt used to use that one, actually. Okay, so that's sometimes called the dominant pentatonic. Guys like John Scofield use that quite a lot as well. So it's dominant 7, but with a 9 in there. So you could also think of that as like a 9 arpeggio, where all of the notes occur in the same octave. So we go root 9, 3, 5, 7, rather than root 3, 5, 7, 9. So if this is something that we're comfortable with, the concept of seeing the pentatonic scale as a form of arpeggio, then we can do what we can with arpeggios to pentatonics, meaning if you know how to play a major 7 arpeggio, it's just a step to make that major 7 sharp 5, or to make a dominant 7, or dominant 7 sharp 5, or dominant 7 flat 5, or minor 7, or minor 7 flat 5, or any of these kind of modifications just by changing a note. So I can do this now with our pentatonic shape. So we could take our major pentatonic, replace it with a 7, and that gives us a dominant option. But then I might then decide, we'll say I wanted to play against a major 7, I might decide to choose the major 7 in its place. So I get the same 2-note per string layout, but a more kind of elaborate choice of notes, if you will. Now, of course, then I could take any kind of template, meaning the numbers can stay the same. So, for example, if I take minor as the template, 1, 3, okay, albeit a flat 3, 4, 5, flat 7, an octave, and I can keep that 1, 3, 4, 5, 7 section, but I can change the intervals to fit any harmonic situation. So for example, if I wanted it to be more of a Lydian sound, okay, I could then keep the root, make the 3 into a major 3rd, the 4 would become a sharp 4, the 5 stays a 5, the 7 becomes a major 7. So instead of our minor, I now have, so the exact same phrase, whatever you've got, so you've got a minor pentatonic phrase like, could become, so the same pattern, as it were, can be substituted into this new harmonic framework, rather like you could do with an arpeggio idea. If you learnt a phrase based on a dominant 7th arpeggio and you want to make it work over major 7, you just change one note. It's as simple as that. So we then end up with a catalogue, if you will, of options. So things like for Lydian would have the sharp 4 and the major 7 and the major 3rd. So that's pretty much everything raised except the 5th. Dominant 7, you could have this thing sometimes players refer to this as the Hindu pentatonic. Strawberry Fields and that. Eric Johnson, Jeff Beck and those kind of players used that a lot. Paul Gilbert and so on. Okay, so of course minor. And you could have minor flat 5 as well. As a pentatonic scale. So all these options, of course you've got 5 fingerings for these as well, not just one fingering. So I could play them like there's 5 positions for any of the pentatonic scales. There's 5 notes. Each of those 5 notes could serve as the lowest note in a 2-note per string pattern. So that's going to give us 5 shapes. So there's quite a lot of work here, but it's valuable work because the patterns that you already know in pentatonic can be substituted straight into these shapes. So a couple of other really cool options, one that I particularly like, it's an inversion of the dominant pentatonic actually, is from a minor perspective, the way that if you see the chord of D9, if I substitute the root notes across to an A, it becomes an A minor 6, or it can also be perceived as an F sharp half diminished. Okay, so this pentatonic for D dominant can be juxtaposed against A minor 6. That's a really cool sound. That kind of sound. It's one of my favourites. And that can also be used against F sharp half diminished. So we're going to revisit that one in a moment. So that's one worthy of your attention. So from low to high, we have the root, the minor 3rd, the perfect 4th, the 5th, the major 6th now, and the tonic. Now, why that's so useful and so applicable is because it alludes to, but it doesn't explicitly state, either the Dorian mode or the melodic minor scale, so it will accommodate both. So it's quite useful when you want to kind of stay in that area where you want to keep your options open. Like you want to maybe use melodic minor sounds, but maybe then you also want to play both flat 7 and major 7 can be included there against minor chords. So minor 6 is really, really great halfway house between the minor 7 and the minor major 7. It allows you to go in either direction. So I really, really like that one. It's a way as well also of making melodic minor scale pentatonicable, for want of a better word. So sometimes one of the reasons why some of these sounds feel less accessible, if you're like me, you're coming at this from a rock or blues background, that's where I started before playing jazz. Some of these other sounds, they don't feel the same as the bluesier sounds because there's no real obvious pentatonic option. With the minor 6 pentatonic, you're in. You know, you can do this with any sound, in fact. And if you go looking, you can create your own pentatonics from almost any scale, really. There's an option available to you if you're prepared to go looking for it. So that's another really, really good one. So I'm just going to give you one more just in terms of just to whet your appetite, and then we're going to start applying these things into real harmony. The altered scale is another one of those scales that we've touched upon lots of times. So that's the melodic minor scale from its 7th degree, the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale. And it gives us the following intervals: the root, the flat 9 and the raised 9, major 3rd, flat 5, raised 5, and flat 7, and then the octave. So there's no sort of real obvious pentatonic option immediately when you look at that. But one of the choices that some players play, in fact I'll give you two. One choice is to play a minor pentatonic, a flattened 3rd above. So over A altered we might play C minor. And that gives us the flat 9, the raised 9, the flat 5, the raised 5, and the flat 7. That's particularly useful in these kind of options where you might substitute pentatonics against the 2 chord and the 1 chord as well. So things like when you're playing a 2-5-1 over E, you might play B minor pentatonic, you know, and you get the, and then over A you might go, you play C minor pentatonic, and then for the D you might play C sharp. So we get a line moving in semitones. We've touched upon that as well. But this isn't the device that we're really going to look at today. I just wanted to mention that just as an aside. And it's something that we could look at if you're interested. But the pentatonic option that I'm going to select, in fact, I'll show you one more. I implied it a moment ago that if we see this as being the 7th mode of the melodic minor scale, if I play A altered, it's coming from B flat melodic minor, I could of course play B flat minor 6. That's another option. That's an option you could play, because B flat minor 6 or C minor 6, in fact, both of those things come from melodic minor scale. They could both be played against our A altered. But the one I'm going to go for today is a slightly different one. I'm going to play the root, I'm going to play the raised 9, I'm going to play the major 3rd, the sharp 5, and the flat 7. That's the sound I'm going to go for. Although you could by any means just choose 5 of your favourite notes. Choose whichever 5 you wish. So that's what I'm going to play against that altered chord. And you can stack these things up in double stops, triple stops, whatever. You know, you can even create chord voicings from them by playing groups of notes together. You know, so there's an awful lot of scope here with these pentatonic things. Anything that you would do with the regular major or minor, you can do it with this. So with regular minor, you might play double stops. Say. So now if I take my altered pentatonic, I can do this exact same thing. play that in double stops or triple stops or whatever you wish to do. You can play any sequences that you would play in pentatonic. You can immediately apply them to these hybrid shapes. So there's a whole host of these that you can go looking for, or you could create your own. You could literally just take a 7-note scale and just select whichever 5 notes take your fancy. In fact, you don't even need to pick the same 5 notes in every octave. You know, there's no reason why I couldn't choose the flat 9 here, and then the raised 9 in the top octave, you know, or the raised 9 in the middle. I don't have to pick the same for each. There's no reason why I have to do that. Let's begin to put these pentatonic options into some harmonic situations. So the first one I'm going to take a look at is a minor 2-5-1 in the key of A minor. So it starts with a B minor 7 flat 5 to some kind of an E7, maybe with a flat 9 or a raised 9 to an A minor 6. Okay, so that's going to be our options. B minor 7 flat 5, E7 flat 9 perhaps, A minor 6. So I'm going to just now stack up some pentatonic options for each of those 3 ideas. I'm going to do this based around the root on the E string and around the root on the A string. If you find a sound that you like, a combination that you like, then it pays to do this in every area, but for brevity's sake, I'm just going to do it in those 2 areas for today. So, of the various choices that I have for a minor 7 flat 5, the choice that I'm going to go for is I'm going to see it like as if it's a D minor. So it's like a D minor with the 6th in the bass, that kind of sound. So imagine I'm going, and that's quite a popular way to envisage a minor 7 flat 5, is to see it like a minor 6 with the 6th in the bass rather than as a minor 7 flat 5. So my option will be D minor 6, pentatonic. But I'm going to reconfigure that. So instead of it being here, I want them all to be in the same area. That's the trick to this, is for us to be able to play this through chord changes, you have to see them in one area. So it's no good my B minor thing being here, the E thing being here, and the A thing being in a different location. I want them all to overlap one another in the same fretboard space. So my D minor 6 or B minor 7 flat 5 looks like this. So when we run that very slow, that's going to be 5th fret, 7th fret, 5th fret, 8th fret, 5th and 7th, 4th and 7th, 6th and 8th, 5th and 7th. And that's B minor 7 flat 5. Okay. For my E7 altered, which is what I'm going to use here, I'm going to use that same configuration that I chose a moment ago, in this case in E, which was the root, the raised 9, the major 3rd, the raised 5, and the flat 7. Although of course I don't want it to be up at the 12th fret, so that same configuration of notes, it's one of the reasons why it's good to know this in all the possible positions. The same configuration of notes here feels like this. That's the way that feels. In fact, that's kind of a good pattern, because that feels like, if we go, there's a way of getting to that pattern. If I go to A minor, I'm just going to skip forward a step. If I go to A minor and play A minor pentatonic, and this is often a common way of teaching this altered pentatonic, is take that shape and drop all the A's to a G sharp, and you can get, not only can you get lines out of this, you can get these chord shapes as well. Which is particularly cool, quite like that. And that's really nice if you are going to use just A minor pentatonic for the A minor, because it's a super easy transition. You only change one note. So that's an option for the A minor, is to choose just A minor pentatonic. Although I think I'm going to go for A minor 6. Well, there's no reason why you can't mix them up as well. You could go from one to the other. So let me run that E altered shape for you again, just so you've got it. I'll go from high to low this time. It's 8th fret, 4th fret, 8th, 5th, 7, 5, 6, 5, 7, 5, 8, 2, 4. Okay, and then for A minor pentatonic, A minor 6. Now, I think it's a good idea also to do this in different locations, so I could do the exact same thing as a D minor 6 tonight for the first chord, this for the second chord, and then this for the third. So that's another alternative for you to do it at the 12th fret. Of course, wherever you can find these things. Let me run those options now along with my backing track. This is the B minor 7 flat 5. Here's our E7. Okay, so I'll play these in triplets. And I can improvise. So on. Man. And on it goes. So there, I mixed the minor 6 with minor 7 pentatonic there a couple of times. And of course, you can break out of this anytime you want. Now, one of the ways to actually make this work, to make these transitions smooth, is to look at the motion, the movement between the three sounds in a very, very small place. So instead of playing the whole scale, B half diminished, and then trying to make that work, moving to the whole scale for the E7, it's too big, it's too clumsy to the A minor. I'll look at the transition points in a very, very small space. So that might even be just 1 or 2 strings at a time. So if I do this now on strings 1 and 2, I'll demonstrate what I mean. D minor 6 pentatonic, or B half diminished, is this. Now I can make that move into the E altered sound just by changing a couple of notes. And A minor 6 is. This is what's going to allow me to play through these changes if it's moving, say, twice that speed or an up tempo. Right? Whereas if the movement between the two events is too large, if there's too much information, you're never going to be able to see it in time. Keep it small, and then you'll be able to make those transitions. So here we go. Okay, so first and second string. that make sense? Now I can do exactly the same thing in the middle two strings. So if I see my D minor 6 or B minor 7 flat 5 as, okay, so against the chords. This is making sense. And the bass strings. And you just move the focus point to wherever you happen to be. Now I'm in the middle. And so on. Okay, so that's the minor version. So next up, we're going to take a look at major. For my major selection, I'm going to choose the following three options. For B minor, so again we're in the key of A major this time. For B minor, I'm going to play just a regular B minor pentatonic scale. But again, I want them all to be in the same area, the same physical location. So maybe if I play it around, centering around the A note on the A string, I might play my B minor here. Okay. Then the E altered, I'm going to pick the same choice of notes that I chose for in the A minor, which is that root, raise 9, major third, raise 5, flat 7. And then for the A major, I'm going to choose either A major pentatonic, or I may even plumb for this version, which has the 6 replaced with the 7. So it's like a condensed major 9 arpeggio, if you like, because it's got the root, the major third, the 5th, the major 7, and the 9, but in the same octave. And I might flip between those two. So between the major or the major 7, major 9 if you like. So again, we run these just as scales. So the B minor pentatonic is altered. There, play the major. See how easy this is once you get this lined up. Again, top 2 strings. B minor, E7, A major, the 12th fret area. B minor, E7, A major. Of course, they're not the only choices, but it's a good idea when you're considering the fact that there's such a lot of options out there. Sometimes it's a good idea to hang your hat on something. So one of the things I've found that allows you to use these things is if there is an infinite number of options possible, I'll just make a decision based upon what I like at that given time and go, even though I know there's a whole bunch of different possibilities here, these are the ones that I'm going to use for the moment, and try and make music with those tools rather than being paralyzed with all the choices, you know, because that can be a real problem where you do get into that situation where the more you know, the more options you get and the less creative you feel because you can feel panicked by the amount of choice. So in this instance, they're the choices that I've made and I'm making music with them, you know. On any other given day, I might come at this from a different perspective and choose a different selection, you know, from a piece-by-piece basis. And that's completely cool and completely valid and completely applicable and useful. I had a great question from David dealing with rhythm, talking about odd note groupings and so on. So I'm just going to touch upon this really and give you a really basic example just to get us started. But before I show you the example, I'd just like to mention a couple of things that you might want to look into. One of which is a thing called Carlock. Indian rhythmic singing, absolutely amazing. I'm very much a beginner. I would consider myself to be, scratching the surface with Carlock. I've only really just begun with it because there's so much you can do with it. But just in the little that I've uncovered with Carlock, it's helped my rhythmic understanding tremendously. So there's 2 sources that I could recommend, one of which is John McLaughlin's DVD called The Gateway to Rhythm with Salva Ganesh Vinayakram. That's really awesome. And then the second is a video series on YouTube by Asaf Serkis called Mastering Rhythm with Carlock. That's really cool as well. You know, I think either of those 2 sources will keep you busy for quite some time. But it's definitely a helpful thing. So Carlock essentially is each rhythmic unit, if you like, has got a verbal representative. So for 2, you've got taka. For 3, it's takita, takidimi for 4, and so on. And the idea is that we separate the rate with phrase. So just because something is moving in triplets doesn't mean to say that you're duty bound to play phrases of 3. So things like, if we take typical pentatonic idea, like we might go da ba 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 ba, C major pentatonic in 3s. But I could play that 3-note phrase in semiquavers and go. Sounds much more interesting. That's where Stevie Wonder lives, yeah? Or you could play a phrase of 4. But I could play that in triplets. So it creates a cross-rhythmic effect. So the trick to this is to see in a way, sort of divorce phrase from rate, meaning just because something's got 4 notes in it doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be played in semiquavers. Just because something has 3 notes in it, it doesn't mean that it needs to be played in triplets. In fact, anything but usually sounds best. Okay, so I'm just going to show you a very simple 5-note phrase. So we're going to play C major pentatonic scale. And I'm going to play just 5 notes going up from D. Then 5 notes going up from G. So it's every string rather than every note. Then 5 notes up from C. And then 5 notes up from E. Now if you play this without the click, you're probably going to hear it as quintuplets. Because we kind of impose click, 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 like so. But we could play this same phrase in triplets. Triplet, triplet, triplet. Like so. Or in semiquavers, 1 E and a, 2 E and a. Or in quintuplets. So in that case, it's a targeting thing. And what can be helpful there is to have a phrase or pattern in mind that turns on that on the 6th note. So stuff like if I just go up the first 5 notes of a major scale. Maybe an arpeggio. Let's finish today with a very simple exercise that relates to phrase and rate. So I click again, 60 beats per minute. I'm going to play a simple descending phrase of 3 coming from, again, from C major pentatonic scale. I'm going to just do. Very simple, yeah? Then I'll do the same thing with 4. It's kind of 2 4-note phrases. What's interesting there is where the notes collide. So every 3rd repetition of my phrase, we hit the downbeat. But of course, that's opposing now between the D and the C. Okay, if I do that now in groups of 5. So it's a descending group of 5. 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3 4 5 1 2 3. Like so. As always, I'd like to thank you for sticking with me this far. That's week number 46 in the bag. I'm hoping that you found something useful. As always, please feel free to send me any questions. We've got some great topics lined up for the final few weeks here. So any questions, suggestions, comments, requests, you name it, I'll give it a go. Please keep in touch and let me know if there's anything that you'd really like me to cover in the last few weeks. I hope you're staying safe, you're staying inspired, and you have a great Easter weekend. Take care of yourself, and I shall see you next week for week number 47.